Indonesia is a land of volcanoes, more than 100 of them rising from the archipelago like sleeping giants. Each one holds stories passed down for generations, of spirits, of curses, of disappearances that were never explained. But few mountains are spoken of in whispers quite like Mount Salak. Nestled in the dense jungles of West Java, Salak has earned a chilling reputation. Known as the Mountain of Death by locals, it has claimed the lives of dozens of hikers and pilots over the decades. Swallowed by fog, vanished without trace, or found under circumstances too strange to understand. The mountain is steeped in legends. Stories of gates to other worlds, invisible beings guarding sacred paths, and ancient markets that appear when no one is looking. Some say Salak doesn't just take the body. It takes your name, your soul. And if you're not careful, it gives something back in return. This story begins with a man named Bayu, a man who came seeking peace in nature and found something else waiting in the mist. The old man smiled gently. "All right," he said, "but listen closely, because this story isn't just a tale. It's a story about who we are." And so the legend came to life once more, not to frighten, but to remind that even in darkness, there is always light. Bayu adjusted the straps on his backpack and tightened his grip on the trekking pole. He was no stranger to mountains. As a seasoned hiker in his early 30s, he had conquered Mount Rinjani, Semeru, and even Merbabu. But something about Salak always made his stomach churn, an inexplicable unease. Sidahu Trail is shorter, but less popular. That means fewer distractions, his friend Rama had said a week earlier. Perfect for a solo hike. You'll be fine. Bayu had trusted Rama's advice, maybe too much. As he pushed forward through the fog, a strange silence settled around him. The forest, usually alive with birds and the rustling of small creatures, was eerily quiet. He paused. No wind, no chirping, not even the crack of twigs underfoot. Just silence. He shook it off and kept walking, until he heard it. A faint sound. Bells. Like a small bell on a bicycle or a goat's collar. Faint, but rhythmic. Ding! 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 Bayu stopped in his tracks. Then came whispers. Indistinct at first, like wind brushing against leaves. But slowly the voices grew clearer. It was as if a market was coming to life in the middle of nowhere. Children laughing, mothers bargaining, the call of a vendor. Bayu froze. There was no way. He was deep in the jungle, at least 4 hours from the nearest village. There shouldn't be anyone here. He turned around. No one. He called out, "Hello?" Silence. Then more laughter. Closer this time. His breath quickened. Instinct told him to run, but curiosity, foolish, dangerous curiosity, made him step forward. He followed the sounds and entered Pasar Setan. The further Bayu walked, the denser the fog became. But within it, silhouettes started to form. A wooden stall, a flickering oil lamp, a woman crouched behind a table filled with what looked like herbs and dried meats. He blinked. The image was gone. Was it hallucination? Fatigue? Then he heard it again. The clinking of coins. A child shouting, "Dapat, boo! Dapat!" The fog pulsed. Bayu took a shaky step forward, his boots sinking into soft, leaf-covered earth. Another stall appeared, this one clearer. It sold wayang kulit, traditional Javanese shadow puppets. The vendor wore a mask, painted red with sharp teeth, a demon's face. Bayu turned to leave, but the trail behind him had vanished. In every direction, fog. In every direction, whispers. His heart pounded. He fumbled for his phone. No signal, of course. Then he remembered what the old man at the warung in Sidahu had said. Kalau kau dengar suara pasar di gunung, jangan cari asalnya. Jangan lihat. Lempar apa saja, makanan, koin, dan jangan bicara. Bayu dug into his pocket. The only thing he could find was a wrapped mint candy. His hand trembled as he tossed it onto the ground. The whispers stopped. Complete silence returned. Then a cold gust of wind, and the sound of something slithering. Bayu didn't move. His breath caught in his throat as the slithering sound grew louder. It wasn't like a snake or a creature crawling. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. He turned. There in the corner of the mist, a figure stood, unmoving, not walking, not floating, just standing. Its body was cloaked in tattered cloth, blackened by age or ash. Its face was veiled in shadow. But from its outline, Bayu could tell. It wasn't shaped like anything human. Too tall, too thin. The arms were long and crooked, bending at angles that defied bone. In its hand, it held a lantern, not lit, just swinging, back and forth. The slithering sound came not from the creature, but from behind it, dozens of dragging, unseen feet. More shadows moving. Bayu stepped back. His foot landed on a brittle branch. Crack! The creature's head tilted. A rasping sound came from its direction. Not speech, not breath, just a deep, guttural vibration. Bayu bolted. He didn't know where he was running. The trail was gone, the fog thick as concrete. He stumbled through hanging vines, roots, and wet earth. Every breath burned. Every step felt like sinking. But the sounds followed. Voices, bells, laughter, whispers in a language he couldn't understand. He tripped, fell hard. His head hit a root. Darkness crept in. Before he passed out, he saw a single coin rolling toward him, slowly, as if pushed by invisible hands. Then, nothing. Bayu awoke to a dull throbbing in his head. The sky above was a hazy gray, the fog still thick but softer now. The eerie noises had stopped. No whispers, no bells, just a deep, unnatural quiet. He sat up, dizzy. Dirt clung to his face and arms. His backpack was still on his shoulders, though it felt heavier somehow. Or maybe he was just weaker now. Something glittered beside him. Coins, dozens of them, scattered in a trail. Bayu's pulse quickened. The coins formed a crooked path leading deeper into the forest. A part of him screamed to run in the opposite direction. But the rest, the part that remembered the stories, the warnings, knew this was no coincidence. The forest was giving him a choice: follow the coins, or disappear forever. He stood slowly, every joint aching. Reaching into his pocket, he found the mint candy wrappers. Empty. No more offerings. He had nothing left but his instincts. He took a step, then another. The coins clinked softly under his boots. Around him, the forest shifted. Not in sight, but in weight. Like the trees were watching, like the air held its breath. As he walked, he saw more stalls, unmoving now, abandoned, covered in moss, rotting, but each one had something placed in front of it. Food, coins, small toys, burnt candles, offerings. And each time he passed one, a whisper would rise faintly and then vanish. The deeper he went, the more real the trail felt. Until finally, the fog began to lift. Ahead, like a miracle, he saw a familiar shape. A tent. Orange, mud-smeared, but real. His camp. His knees buckled, he ran, collapsed at the front of the tent. Then, footsteps, voices, real ones. "Bayu! Oh my God, Bayu! We've been searching all night!" Rama's voice, and others. The SAR team. They found him, 50 meters from the main camp. Only. Bayu swore he had walked for hours in the opposite direction. The mountain had turned him around. Or maybe something else had. Something ancient. Something hungry. Something that watched, bartered, and waited in the fog. The rescue team assumed Bayu had gotten lost, that his panic had made him disoriented. He tried to believe that too. But the coin, he found it in his jacket pocket that night. A strange, heavy coin. Old. Carved with symbols he didn't recognize. Not Indonesian. Not any currency he'd ever seen. It was cold, even after sitting against his skin for hours. He didn't tell anyone. Not even Rama. Days passed, but sleep didn't return. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard them. The bells, the bargaining, the laughter, the rasping breath of the shadow vendor. Bayu tried burning incense, sleeping with lights on. He even visited a dukun in Depok, who turned pale after touching the coin and told Bayu to bury it at a crossroads during a moonless night. He did. He thought it was over. Until he saw a child, barefoot, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, standing outside his apartment gate. The child was staring, smiling, and from the child's hand, something dropped. A coin. Bayu never opened the gate. But the coin was inside his room the next morning. He left the city after that. Moved to a coastal town far from Salak, from mountains, from forests. But the nightmares followed. In them, he walked through fog, always the same, always returning to that market. The stalls weren't empty now. They were watching, waiting, offering things he didn't want to understand. One night, in the dream, he walked up to the shadow vendor. This time he didn't run. He asked, "What do you want?" The vendor lifted its lantern. A flame flickered for the first time. And in the glow, Bayu saw his own face, hollowed, pale, lifeless, staring back at him. He woke up screaming. Outside his window, in the mist, bells rang. Ding, ding, ding! 6 months had passed since Bayu moved to the sleepy town of Pangandaran. The days were quiet, the sea breeze calming, and for a time, the whispers seemed to fade. But peace never lasts when the veil is thin. One rainy afternoon, as thunder cracked over the shoreline, Bayu received a letter. No name, no return address. Inside, a photo. A blurred shot of a forest trail, mist curling between the trees. On the back, scrawled in jagged handwriting, "You left something behind." His hands trembled. A ringing sound began in his ears. Ding! 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 He dropped the photo, but he couldn't unsee it. It was the same trail from Mount Salak, the same fog. Something inside him, a pull stronger than fear, whispered that he had to go back, not just to survive, to end it. Bayu packed lightly, just enough for a short trip. He didn't tell anyone, not Rama, not his neighbors, not even the kind woman who ran the guest house where he'd stayed for the past half-year. He left a note that simply read, "I have to face it." The journey back to West Java felt like descending into a memory that never healed. The mist began to greet him long before he reached the base of Mount Salak. As he passed through Tidahu again, the warung where he once bought coffee was abandoned. Its wooden walls now warped, roof half collapsed, as if it too had aged a decade while he was away. At the trailhead, The forest stood still, unchanged, waiting. Bayu stood there for a long time, breathing. Then, he stepped into the mist again. This time, there were no footsteps behind him, no bird song to greet him. Only the sound of a distant bell. Ding! The deeper Bayu ventured into the forest, the more familiar everything became. Yet not quite. Trees stood in slightly different places. The scent of damp earth had a sharper edge. The fog no longer felt passive. It moved with him, pulsing like a living thing, inhaling and exhaling around his every step. He walked for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had lost its grip. Then he saw it, the lantern, swinging from a low branch, just like before, but this time it was lit. A dim, pale flame swayed inside the glass, casting long shadows on the ground. The trees bent away from it, unnaturally curved as if recoiling in fear. Bayu's breath hitched. He didn't want to move closer, but his legs kept walking. Under the lantern was something new. A circle of coins, perfectly arranged. In the center, a mask. Red, wooden, with jagged black teeth. The same one the vendor wore in his nightmare. Bayu knelt slowly. There was writing beneath the mask, scratched into the dirt in an old Javanese script. He couldn't read it, but he felt it. To return what was taken, a trade must be made. Suddenly, wind howled through the trees. The flame inside the lantern burst higher, illuminating dozens of figures between the trees. They were watching, unmoving, masked, waiting. His pulse pounding in his ears. The masked figures made no sound. They stood between the trees like statues carved from fog and memory. Only the lantern flickered, casting unnatural shadows that slithered along the forest floor. He looked down at the mask again. The dirt beneath it shimmered faintly, as if reacting to his presence. The carved words still echoed in his mind. To return what was taken, a trade must be made. What was taken? Bayu whispered aloud. My peace, my time, my soul. At that moment, one of the masked figures stepped forward. Its mask was different, white with black streaks, like dried tears. In its hand was a small offering bowl made of bone, and inside it, a photograph. Bayu's hands trembled as he took it. It was him, asleep, in his bed. From the angle, the photo could only have been taken from inside his room. He dropped it in horror, but the figure didn't flinch. Then it extended its hand, not to offer, but to receive. A trade. Bayu reached for his bag. He had packed lightly: water, a flashlight, an old family heirloom, a small kris passed down from his grandfather. The only thing of real value. He unsheathed it slowly. The blade was blackened with age, but the edge still gleamed faintly. This? He asked. The figure nodded once. Bayu placed the kris into the bone bowl. Instantly, the flame in the lantern flared, turning deep red. A wind swept through the trees, and the figures all bowed in unison, a slow, reverent motion. The mask on the ground cracked. From inside it, something crawled out. A small, writhing shape of light, like fire made of memory. It hovered in front of Bayu's face, then sank into his chest. He gasped, not in pain, but in sudden clarity. Visions flooded his mind. The origin of the market, a curse cast by ancient priests, a punishment for those who broke pacts with the unseen. Bayu wasn't just a visitor now. He had been marked long ago, a debt inherited from bloodlines he never knew were tied to this mountain. He collapsed to his knees. The figures began to fade, one by one like smoke in the wind. The fog retreated with them. Bayu was alone again, but something inside him had changed. He knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of his true role in the market's story. The trade had been accepted, but the price still unfolding. The next morning, Bayu woke on the forest floor. The mask, the lantern, the figures gone. But the path ahead was unmistakable now, marked by coins, symbols, and faint etchings in the trees that glowed softly when touched by sunlight. The mountain had accepted his offering, but it hadn't released him. As he moved deeper into the jungle, the air grew colder. Not just cool, but bitter, like the edge of a grave. Birds were silent. Even insects had vanished. Then he saw it. A gate. Ancient. Made of blackened wood and iron covered in moss. It stood impossibly tall, wedged between cliffs that hadn't been on any map. The carvings along the beams shimmered when he approached. Depictions of demons, offerings, people bowing, being swallowed by shadow. A sign hung crooked above the arch, carved in both old Javanese and something far older. He didn't need to read it to know. This was the true entrance to the Pasar Setan. Suddenly the trees behind him shifted. Something was coming. From the darkness under the gate, a tall figure emerged. It wore no mask. Its face was skeletal, stretched like old parchment, eyes deep and endless. It held a staff made of twisted root and bone, and its body was draped in tattered robes that pulsed as if breathing. Bayu didn't run. He bowed. The figure spoke, not in words, but in thoughts. They arrived in Bayu's mind like thunder. You are the blood returned, the debt remembered. You may enter, if you leave behind your name. Bayu's throat dried. Leave. My name? The figure nodded slowly. A name binds you to the world, keeps you known. If you enter with it, you will never leave. Bayu stood still. His name, his identity, everything he was. If he gave it up, would he still be himself? But he had come this far. He exhaled. My name is no more. A wind howled. The figure stepped aside. The gate creaked open, and Bayu stepped into the market. As Bayu stepped through the ancient gate, the air changed. It was heavier, not humid, but full, saturated with something unseen. The silence was complete, unnatural. No birds, no wind, only the sound of his own breath. And then, the market exhaled. Tents bloomed into place like fungi, appearing where there had been nothing. Lanterns ignited without flame, hovering in the air like orbs of sorrow. Stalls emerged from the ground, stitched together from bone, skin, wood, and rusted metal. No one spoke, but the place buzzed with anticipation. Bayu walked slowly. The vendors were not human. Their eyes glowed amber, and their mouths never moved. Yet as he passed, he heard whispers, tales of betrayal, names of the dead, secrets he had buried deep inside himself. One stall sold time. Another offered dreams taken from dying children. Another sold memories. And Bayu saw his mother's face among them. He stumbled back, heart racing. Do not run, said a voice beside him. It was not a person, but a shape of robes and teeth. Why am I here? Bayu asked. To remember, it said, and to pay. From the center of the market, a bell rang, not the small chime from before. This was a gong, deep, resonant, final. All movement stopped. Every figure turned. From the fog beyond the farthest stall, something massive approached. Its body was obscured, its size impossible to judge, but its presence pressed on Bayu like 1,000 hands, each digging into his skin. The ground cracked beneath its weight. It was the collector, the one who kept the balance, and it had come for him. Bayu clenched his fists, standing firm. He had traded his name, he had passed the gate. But this was the true trial. The collector towered above Bayu, its form never fully visible, like smoke trapped in flesh. Limbs moved where no limbs should be, and its face was a shifting mask of all the people Bayu had ever feared or failed. 1,000 whispering voices filled the air around him, none louder than a breath, but together deafening. Bayu's knees buckled, but he remained standing. "I am here," he said aloud, voice breaking. "I've paid, I want to leave." The collector tilted its head. The ground quaked. The market stalls around them trembled. "You paid the price to enter, but you did not ask the cost to leave." Bayu's heart dropped. "What do you want?" The collector extended a single limb. In its clawed fingers, it held another mask, half white, half charred black. Bayu's own face slowly formed on it, carved in exact likeness. There must always be a keeper. A name was left behind. A body remains. One must fill the space that memory abandoned. Bayu took a step back. "Number, that wasn't the deal." "There was no deal," the voices hissed. "Only tradition." The ground beneath him cracked wider. Hands reached up, thin, gray, pleading. They pulled at his ankles, his shadow, his soul. Then, a whisper. "Bayu." His name. It rang like a bell. Someone was calling it. From beyond the gate, from the world he left, someone remembered him. The collector recoiled. Its form wavered. Bayu ripped himself free and ran toward the sound, toward his name, toward the fading echo of who he was. Behind him, the market screamed. The stalls crumbled. The lights exploded into ash. The fog thickened and twisted violently. He dove through the gate and woke in his old room. The coin was gone. The kriss was gone. But a mask, half white, half black, sat quietly on his windowsill. Bayu didn't know how long he sat there, staring at the mask. Half white, half black. It didn't move. It didn't speak. But he could feel it. The market had not released him, not entirely. He stepped outside. Jakarta's chaos had returned. Traffic, voices, heat. But it all felt distant, like watching reality through old glass. Bayu wandered through the city, each person he passed seeming like a shadow of something he once knew. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt real, until he heard it, a faint sound, a bell, ding, ding, ding. No one else reacted, only him. Back in his room that night, he opened his desk drawer. Inside, a folded piece of paper waited. He didn't put it there. He opened it slowly. It read, "You are known again. We remember, and memory is the key." Over the next few weeks, Bayu began to see others, strangers with masks etched faintly into their shadows, men with hollow eyes lingering near train stations, a woman whispering to an empty stall at the market. The market wasn't a place. It was spreading. It had always been here, just out of sight, hidden in forgotten rituals and silence between conversations. And now, through Bayu, it had a name again. The balance had shifted, and those who had long waited in the fog began to cross over. The kriss was found in Bayu's room one morning, bloodless, clean, waiting. He knew what it meant. One cannot escape a pact once made. He returned to Salak, not to climb, not to run, but to prepare. The path welcomed him now. The fog parted. The lanterns lit as he approached. No one greeted him, but a stall stood open, empty, waiting for a vendor. Bayu stepped behind it. He wore the mask, and the market breathed again.